Hello and welcome back to my office hours here at Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. I'm Bob Reich. You are you, and we're together. And this is live. Today I want to talk to you about the New Hampshire primary and what's happening and what will happen after that, the next primary. We'll talk about the worst of the week, the absolute worst thing where I kind of get it's therapeutic for me, and hopefully you learn something at the same time, and we'll also answer your questions. Okay? How's that? All right. Oh, by the way, if you want to let other people know right now that I am and you are, and we're doing this live, please feel free. And if you want to watch this later, you can, but there's something about live that is live. And if you want to subscribe, there's supposed to be a button over there someplace. You can subscribe. And I finally learned, if you subscribe, what happens is you get a little ping that notifies you next Thursday at this time when we'll do another one. Okay. Oh, but I just realized next Thursday at this time, I am on my way to my father's 102nd birthday. Can you imagine? He's 102. Ed Reich. So maybe we'll find a different time. All right, New Hampshire primary. Now, you know the results. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I want to emphasize a couple of things. The most important thing in terms of emphasizing is that 83% of people under the age of 30, 83%, voted in the Democratic primary for Bernie Sanders. Now, this repeats a similar performance in the Iowa caucuses, but this is even bigger than the Iowa caucuses. It illustrates something that, just bear with me for a minute, because Hillary, when she conceded the New Hampshire primary, she said, "I know I have some work to do, particularly with young people." Hillary, when she says, "I have work to do," I've known Hillary for a long time. She is the hardest working person in American politics I have ever met. So when she says, "I know I have some more work to do with the young people," that means in her head, it's all about working harder. And I want to suggest to her, and maybe the best way of suggesting to her is through you, and indirectly it gets back to her and to people around her, that it's not a matter of working harder to get young people. It's a matter of inspiring them to get involved in a movement. This is what Bernie Sanders is doing. I mean, if it weren't Bernie Sanders, it would be Elizabeth Warren, or it would be somebody else. It's a movement to take back our democracy and also our economy from the moneyed interests. That's what this is all about. That's what Bernie is all about. That's why young people are so engaged. That's why the movement is so important. And if Hillary wants to work harder, that's fine. But if she really does want to get young people inspired and mobilized and organized, she is going to have to become part of that movement. All right? Hillary, do you understand what I'm saying? Well, give me a call. We'll talk more. Tonight there's going to be another debate between Hillary and Bernie. And I tell you, I expect that she is probably going to be even more aggressive. I mean, just like she works harder, part of working harder is to be more aggressive. And she's going to be more aggressive. She's going to be talking about foreign policy and trying to make Bernie Sanders look like he knows nothing about foreign policy. I don't know how much he knows, but most presidents, when they go and they start their presidency, are not experts in foreign policy. They don't have a lot of foreign policy experience. Many of them are governors or have been governors, and a governor doesn't do foreign policy. I mean, they become presidents, and they can become great presidents with regard to foreign policy because they get really good, intelligent people around them, and they have the right values. And Bernie voted against the Iraq War. I want to remind you, Hillary did not. Some of you have written to me about the delegate count. Now, after the New Hampshire primary, the media declared that obviously Bernie got 20% more votes than Hillary, but he tied Hillary with regard to the delegates to the National Democratic Convention. How can that possibly be? These are my little caricatures of Bernie, and Hillary. What do you think? So there's 712 superdelegates. The reason that the delegate count is equal in New Hampshire is that the assumption being that a lot of superdelegates in New Hampshire will go or have already pledged to go for Hillary. Now, who are superdelegates, and how can they decide that they're going to do something when the majority says they want something else? Well, superdelegates are either members of Congress or they are state leaders of the party. They are people who are political insiders. And Hillary has rounded up most of these superdelegates to the Democratic Convention and asked them to support her. And many of them have already said that they would support her. Now, if this bothers you, I mean, I don't mean Hillary versus Bernie and Hillary's superdelegates. I'm talking about the whole idea of there being superdelegates. It's about one, out of 4,763 delegates, 712 are superdelegates. That comes to about 1 out of 6, right? 1 out of 6. So that means 1 out of 6 delegates to the Democratic National Committee convention will not have been elected or basically tied to the results of a caucus or a primary. And I do find that troubling. I find it troubling because to me it's anti-democratic. It's all about the establishment, folks. This is the same problem. It's big money, it's insiders, it's the establishment that is turning and has turned its back for years on average people, average middle class, working class, poor people in this country. And this is why the deck is stacked, as Hillary Clinton herself said when she announced her candidacy. The deck is stacked in favor of those at the top. Or the game is rigged, as Bernie Sanders keeps saying. Because when you got, who are the superdelegates? They're basically people who are insiders. Why are they insiders? Because either they have some very rich patrons on the outside, they've bundled a lot of money in the past for political campaigns. They are very well entrenched in the Democratic Party. They are not people who are necessarily like you. That's the problem. There should be no superdelegates. Let me mention something about the Republicans. I must mention the Republicans. What do you think? What do you think? Did I overdo it with the hair? Look, the big issue with the Republicans right now is that the establishment, and that is corporations and Wall Street and the superdelegates and the insiders and the Washington lobbyists and all of those people, they are desperately trying to find an anti-Trump. They thought they had it in Rubio, and of course Rubio really did over the last weekend when he looked like a blubbering idiot trying to answer Governor Christie's questions. Chris Christie's questions when Chris Christie asked him, aren't you just repeating lines that you've rehearsed over and over again? And then he gave rehearsed lines over and over again. Well, you can't do that. I mean, the great thing about the debates is that sometimes the public can actually see who these people are. And Rubio melted down after that. So basically, you've got Kasich, who came in second in New Hampshire, who's in many ways the most moderate of the Republicans. That doesn't mean he's moderate. Can I just mention, Kasich defunded Planned Parenthood in Ohio, for example. He's very, very right-wing. I worked with him when he was in Congress. He was a nice guy. I like John Kasich, but he's very far over to the right. And then you have Jeb Bush. And frankly, I don't see at this point the Republican establishment coalescing around Rubio, Kasich, or Bush. But as long as they stay fighting, and they're going to continue to fight, then Trump wins double from New Hampshire. He not only won New Hampshire and all the New Hampshire delegates, and he not only has momentum to go into the next set of primaries, but he's got the Republicans fighting among themselves, and that means that he is more entrenched than he was before. And I don't want to spend and waste our time talking about Donald Trump. You know Donald Trump. In fact, if you haven't had a chance to see the Johnny Depp, did you see it? You know, Johnny Depp plays Donald Trump in the Funny or Die movie. It's 50 minutes. It's called The Art of the Deal, the movie. Watch it. I think you can get it. Just Google it or go to YouTube. You can find it. Johnny Depp as Donald Trump. It's 50 minutes. It is very, very good. And as the Donald continues to ascend, it is more important that we know who he is, and we also appropriately satirize the Donald. All right, to come. Nevada, again, is February 20th for the Democrats. For the Republicans, it's February 24th. Why can't the Republicans and Democrats get together on the same day for their caucuses and primaries? This is a caucus in Nevada, but note, with regard to South Carolina, for the Democrats, it's going to be February 27th. For the Republicans, it's going to be February 20th. Again, more confusion. But note, please, particularly all of those of you in Nevada and in South Carolina. And then we've got Super Tuesday on March 1st. Now, what is Super Tuesday? Super Tuesday is Super Tuesday because you've got Alabama and Alaska and Arkansas and California and Colorado and Massachusetts and Wisconsin and Oklahoma and Tennessee and Texas and Vermont and Virginia, all of them who have primaries on that one day. And that is going to be a really significant day. Those of us who are in places like California, we're disenfranchised. I mean, why aren't we in there? California, I mean, I'm here in California, and I feel like, what am I? You know, chopped liver? Okay, we now come to a special feature, which is the worst of the week. The worst of the week. We did this last week, and this week there's a tie. The worst of the week this week, the Ferguson, Missouri City Council this morning decided that they would not go forward with an agreement they already had with the Justice Department in terms of training the police and making sure the police use stun guns instead of bullets whenever possible, and that there was better training for the police. I mean, all kind of reasonable stuff. But then finally, at the last minute, the Missouri City Council today said no to the agreement they just negotiated less than a day ago, and so that they're going to have a lawsuit with litigation with the Justice Department. Now, why is the Ferguson, Missouri City Council saying no to the agreement? Because they said they can't afford the agreement. They can't afford to have a monitor of the police. They can't afford better training of the police. Well, that's baloney. I mean, the lawsuit itself is going to cost them an estimated $4 to $8 million. That's more than they would have to pay to train the police better. This is a small town. Why can't they do it? Why are they litigating? And they're going to probably lose anyway. So they lose, they spend $4 to $8 million, and then on top of that, they got a lousy police force. This is stupid. Members of the Ferguson, Missouri City Council, if you are watching, I don't want to criticize you as strongly as perhaps you should be criticized, but let me just tell you, you are dumb. And anybody in Ferguson, get rid of these people on the city council. Okay, they were tied. The other outrage of the week, worst of the week, is the Supremes. The Supreme Court, particularly the 5 Republican members of the Supreme Court. These are my little caricatures. You like them? Well, what did they do? Well, just, 2 days ago, they decided that they would uphold, actually they would reverse, I'm sorry, let me get this. Legal process can be complicated, it shouldn't be complicated, it's like economics. If you understand it, it is very simple, and it should be simple to explain. Let me explain. You have the Environmental Protection Agency putting out a regulation with regard to limiting carbon emissions from power plants. That's a major source of that's a major source of emissions, carbon emissions, and it's under the Environmental Protection Act. Agencies have the authority to put out regulations that interpret a statute of Congress like the Environmental Protection Act. Well, obviously, there are people out there and groups out there and companies out there and utilities and the coal producers and everybody else who says, no, we don't want that. We don't want you to regulate carbon emissions. I don't know why. Well, obviously, it's money. So what they did is they went to the courts and they said, we want to litigate this, and even though we know it's going to take years to litigate, even before we start litigating, we want a stay. We want to hold. We want to freeze that regulation so it can't be implemented. And the Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, the court they went to, said that's crazy. Obviously, we're not going to hold up this thing. And then so those same parties went to the Supreme Court to appeal that decision by the lower courts, and the Supreme Court said, at least the 5 Republicans, they said, okay, we'll hold it, we'll stay it, we'll freeze it. It is the first time in history that a Supreme Court has overruled a lower court in terms of freezing, staying a regulation. The first time in history. And what reason did the 5 Supreme Court justices give? None. They didn't give a reason. There was no reason. Okay, I was just about to give you my closing, but I forgot. I want to take your questions. All right, let's have your questions. I was getting a little bit overheated about the Supreme Court, and I apologize. All right, Deborah Johnson, regarding superdelegates, so what do we do about it? Well, Deborah, you know, it's up to the Democratic National Party, and what you need to do is petition. I mean, start a petition. In fact, I started a petition this morning. I did. You can find it. The petition that I started says, and it's to the DNC, and it says, you've got to stop all of these superdelegates. You've got to make every delegate actually responsible for the vote count in that primary or that caucus. But you don't have to sign my petition. You do your own petition. But I think that if the DNC gets enough pressure, never underestimate the importance of pressure on these kinds of issues and publicity. Rodrigo Acosta, is that how you pronounce your name? Why can't sustainability be our economic goal? Why are we so concerned with gross domestic product and unemployment? Well, Rodrigo, there are 2 different kinds of economic growth, and you've got to keep them separate because they get confused. One kind of economic growth is an economic growth that's just based on more stuff, using more energy, buying more stuff, filling your homes with more stuff, materialism. But there's another kind of growth that actually enables the United States economy or any economy to do more of what we want to do. And some of what we might want to do is invested in education or public health or the environment. I mean, wealthy countries tend to have cleaner environments than poor countries. So we might, in the United States, want growth simply because we want the more capacity, more economic, productive capacity to be applied to things that we all think are very important. Do you understand? All right. Jack Straw, who came up with the starve the beast tactic, and do you believe it has worked? Will our current huge debt prevent our country from adopting the social programs that Bernie is proposing? Jack, the starve the beast, a lot of you maybe have not heard of starve the beast. This was something that David Stockman, when he was OMB director, I think under Reagan, he came up with the phrase, starve the beast. The notion was the government spends a lot of money but keeps taxes low. In Reagan's case, it was spending a lot of it mostly on military. And it kept taxes reasonably low. Reagan had that large tax cut. And so the beast, being the federal government, that's what Stockman called it, was so starved for tax revenues, and there was so much outlay, particularly with regard to military, that there was a deficit crisis. There was a budget deficit crisis, and that conservatives thought would necessarily lead to a shrinking over time of the federal government. Well, it didn't exactly work that way. What we had instead is low taxes on the wealthy. We had military Keynesianism, which helped the economy grow, but we had widening inequality, and that was the beginning of a lot of our problems, not only the deficit. Will our current huge debt prevent our country from adopting the social programs that Bernie is proposing? Jack, I don't think so, because a lot of the proposals that Bernie is making actually will help reduce the debt. For example, a single-payer plan will reduce the trajectory of healthcare costs for Medicare and Medicaid, just as it will also help families. Right now we're spending, 18% of our whole GDP on healthcare. Well, You can't go on like that because the baby boomers are 76 million of us. We're getting older. Over the next 25 years, you're going to have 76 million bodies, baby boomer bodies, corroding at the same time. I'm sorry. Did I just insult anybody? But you get my point. I mean, the healthcare cost is going to be huge. A single-payer plan is so much more efficient than a plan that we have right now, which depends on private for-profit insurers. I mean, our system right now, even with Obamacare, is really designed to avoid sick people. All right. Next question. Dorte Madison. Dorte, is that how you pronounce your first name? Can you shed some light on how money influences the decisions in Washington and how we can call out those who are in the pockets of special interests? Well, Dorte, first of all, please, if you haven't, read my book. That's what it's all about. I mean, no matter where you look in the market economy. I mean, bankruptcy is a good example. I mean, bankruptcy law right now allows somebody like Donald Trump to declare bankruptcy 4 or 5 times, shield his fortune. He can just do whatever he wants. But if you are a graduate laden with student debt you can't possibly manage, you can't get bankruptcy to reorganize your debts. If you are a homeowner, you're caught in the downdraft of the Great Recession, you could not use bankruptcy to try to reorganize your mortgage debt. Donald Trump gets it. You don't. But look everywhere else. I mean, look at the patents. I mean, you have patent law that allows companies in the pharmaceutical industry to pay generic pharmaceutical manufacturers. That is, after the patent officially has worn off, those generic are paid by the proprietary drug companies to delay the introduction of their generic versions of the same drugs that are much cheaper. Pay for delay. It's legal in the United States. Why is it legal in the United States? For the same reason the bankruptcy laws are rigged against you. Because you've got very powerful players who are pouring lobbying money and also a great deal of campaign money into Washington. And they're also pouring a lot of money into propaganda, frankly, designed to influence your opinions and disguise what they're doing. When I first got to Washington, I'm gonna get my next question right now, but let me just finish saying this. When I first got to Washington, I started Washington. I was an intern for Robert F. Kennedy in the summer of '67. Washington was kind of a seedy town. It was not glamorous. It didn't have the huge hotels, the beautiful marble, and the thick napkins in the restaurants, and the heavy the silverware and all that, the gorgeousness of Washington now. No, Washington was a seedy town because that was before you had all of that money coming in from big corporations and Wall Street, the trade associations, billionaires to influence legislation. You had some, not much. And that's the importance. That's why it is so critically important to get our economy and our democracy back from the moneyed interests. There's no way we can do it otherwise. Campaign finance reform, reversing Citizens United, ending the revolving door, making sure that all sources of campaign money are fully disclosed. Jeffrey Gagne. Why does the majority of the black community support Clinton over Bernie when it appears that Bernie will do much more for them than Clinton will? Well, Jeffrey, look, I can't speak for the minority community, obviously. I know that many people in the people of color, people who are in the minority community, have very fond feelings toward and memories of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. And I do too. I mean, I worked with Bill Clinton, and I've known Hillary for many years. But I think it's very important for everybody to assess the candidates on the strength of what they actually are, who they are, where they're getting money from, what they believe, what their values actually are, what they've done in the past. And I think, personally, people of color, my view is that they will do very, very, very well with both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, maybe better with Bernie Sanders than Hillary Clinton, because Hillary is very much wedded to the establishment, far more wedded. Well, she is wedded to the establishment. I'm not saying anything you don't know. Either one of them is 1,000 times better than any Republican. Can we make that very clear, if I haven't made that clear already? All right. Yes, we have time. Alessandro Luna, what is the overall effect of Sanders' campaigning? Has he truly incited change? Well, Alessandro, we don't know. I'll tell you the most impressive thing about Bernie Sanders' campaign, as I started to talk about before, is that it is a movement. It is a mobilization. It's not just young people. It's middle-aged people, older people. They care not so much about Bernie. And I want to emphasize this. Bernie's campaign is about the movement to take America back, our economy and our democracy back from the moneyed interests. Hillary's campaign is basically about Hillary. Now, I'm not criticizing, because I think Hillary would make an excellent president for the system we now have. I think Bernie is the best candidate to get a very different kind of system, a system that I believe should be our system and is much more responsive to average people. So the medium is the message. The Bernie campaign is essentially that movement, and to the extent that that movement keeps building, that will be a force for change. That movement will be a force for change. All right, next question. Carol Coyote, or is that Coyote? What effect do endorsements have? Carol, I think endorsements have no effect at all, particularly if the endorsements are from members of Congress or governors and past presidents or whatever, because this election, more than any other election I remember, is about really being an anti-establishment, being an outsider, looking at the people who normally give the endorsements and saying, I don't trust those people. Because those people have been part of a system that has not really helped me. In fact, in many respects, has harmed me, hurt me. I have my hand out for another question, but that's just why I'm doing this. Carol, I think it's very, very important to understand that in this election, the traditional kind of endorsements can actually hurt a candidate. Niels Christensen. What do you think is the main reason the U.S. has gone so far to the right politically? Well, Niels, I think the Republican Party, certainly over the last 25, 30 years, has been the beneficiary of a huge mobilization by the American business community and by Wall Street and also by evangelicals, very different group, obviously, to become politically successful. And certainly the first groups, the business community, big corporations, Wall Street, came loaded with money, even before Citizens United. And all of that organization, all of that money has helped a great deal to not only solidify the Republican Party electorally, particularly at the state level, but also move them to the right on so many issues, particularly with regard to economic issues and workers' issues. I mean, look at the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers right now have organized a bunch of billionaires and multimillionaires they are at this moment financing all around the country political campaigns kind of under the radar that will push our nation's state houses and maybe a lot of congressional races to the right. And that is because the Koch brothers stand to gain from deregulation, from lower taxes on the rich, from all kinds of things that they have essentially got as the Republican Party has moved rightward. All right, we have time for one more question, and then we're going to have to end. I feel badly that we have to come to an end, but we'll do this again. And even though I am going to be celebrating next week my father's 102nd birthday, we'll find another time. 102. Can you imagine 102? I'm so proud of him, really. Okay, Sam, I'm not proud because he's 102. I mean, it's luck, it's genes, but he's he hangs in there. Okay, Sam Coates, what are you getting your dad? What are you getting your dad for your birthday? For his birthday? Well, that's appropriate. Sam, I haven't decided yet. My father, for his whole life, even when I was a little boy, he played golf. In fact, over his lifetime of golf, he has got 4 holes in one. 4. The last hole in one he got. Now, for those of you who don't play golf, you don't know what a hole in one is. It's basically, you tee off, you swing, and you get right there. Your ball gets right into the cup. He got 4 of those. The last hole-in-one he got was when he was 96 years old. So I was thinking of getting him something. He stopped playing golf, but I was thinking of getting him something, some golf related. Maybe, I always used to get him, a set of golf balls. So it could, I don't know, he might laugh because of the absurdity of giving him golf balls when he's 102. Anyway, listen, it's been a pleasure, and hope you enjoyed it, and continue to tune in. We'll let you know next week when we're going to do it, and I hope you find this useful. I want to thank again my assistants here, Zoe Beck, Zoe Umlaut Beck, and Yael Bridge. They've been an enormous help. They continue to be. Good luck. Have a great week.